too much, too late. It was way too late. It was not proactive enough. If he would have done it proactively, the problem wouldn't have grown to this scale. But now that he's doing it too late, it's too much for the people on his left. It's too late for the people on his right. He has split the baby, and he's in a lose-lose situation. Biden has recently begun a crackdown of the southern border, and this has people asking if it's too little too late. A lot of people question whether or not this is really going to do anything to stem the tide of illegal border crossings. And it's very clearly in response to his fledgling poll numbers against former President Donald Trump. Trump obviously has been a stalwart, at least in his rhetoric, about illegal immigration and securing the border. And Biden has just been very divided. On almost day one of his presidency, he reversed over 40 executive orders and things that had proved to be effective under Donald Trump. And we have seen in the last 3 years a wave of illegal immigration like we've never seen at any other time in our history. Most estimates say about 10 million people who have entered the country. And so now, as we're getting close to the election and immigration is a huge issue, it's towards the top of the list for most Americans. Economy is the very top of the list, but many people are concerned about this, especially in border states. He is beginning to crack down, and he's doing it in some ways that are like very much resembling some of Trump's former policies. So is this going to help him? Is this going to hurt him? Is it too little, too late? The New York Magazine has a really interesting perspective on this. It says, in a policy move that the White House has been telegraphing for a good while, on Tuesday, President Biden signed an executive order that will temporarily cap asylum requests at the U.S.-Mexico border in an effort to reduce the number of border crossings and neutralize a big 2024 campaign issue. As the Washington Post explains, it's a simple idea that could become pretty complex in practice. Basically, he is saying that as long as illegal border crossings remain above an average of 2,500 per day, then he will impose broad restrictions. A similar cap, accompanied by a major boost in border security funding, was the centerpiece of bipartisan legislative deal that Republicans repudiated early this year, reportedly on orders from Donald Trump. Now, to the Republicans' credit, one of the things they said is, we don't need this bill because as president, you can just take the same actions that Trump took and you can take care of this. And Biden and his team said, no, we can't do that. We have to have this bill. When the bill didn't pass and immigration was still a sore spot for the campaign, then Biden kind of showed his cards by saying, okay, I guess I can do some of this executive action, and in a way proved the Republicans right. The whole thing's a mess. I'm not sure anybody has the plan for border reform, but it says reportedly on orders from Donald Trump, who didn't want to give Biden a victory on his own signature issue. So this is supposed to be a stopgap. However, despite significant recent drops of border crossings, the cap is below what we've seen lately, about 3,700 per day. But the reaction to this new policy indicates that Biden may be in danger of falling between two stools, as has also been the case with his policies towards the war in Gaza. As Semaphore reports, progressive Democrats and some Latino activists are very unhappy. And here's where we get to where Biden seems, from his own base, to be splitting the baby. Progressive and Hispanic Democrats vented their frustration Monday night as they prepared for President Biden to unveil a far-reaching executive action. I think it's really disappointing, Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal told Semaphore, adding that she'd been briefed on the new order's content ahead of its Tuesday signing. It plays into the idea that somehow harsh enforcement is going to work. Another, Greg Kasar, said we shouldn't fall into the trap that Republicans have set for us. It's going to not help the president politically because Fox News is never going to give him any credit. So what he's saying is that this article is saying it's not too little too late. It's actually too much too late. Wow. In other words, he's in trouble on both sides. Number one, this is correct. Republicans are saying this isn't going to do anything. I don't know if that's true or not, but they're making the case. This action, it's just window dressing. It's to help him in the campaign. It's not going to help him at all, actually. I mean, 2,500 a day, as long as it's under that, we don't even take any real action. I mean, that's a lot of people. 2,500 per day over the span of a year, that's a lot of people. So they're saying this is really nothing. So that's on the right. And then to his left, people are saying, how dare you? You're supposed to be like the kind, generous, loving, let people in, everyone gets asylum. And so he's splitting the baby. And the real issue is that, number one, it seems that he is having to admit at some level that Trump is somewhat right about border security. And so that's not good for his campaign. He's not getting any credit from the people to his right. And he has disappointed the people to his left. And what really happened here is, as soon as he reversed those executive orders and people started pouring across the border, there was a problem. And problems require proactive action. Regardless of your political stance, the border is a very complex issue. If you pretend the border is not a complex issue, then you don't understand what's going on at the border. We need serious reform there. We need serious action taking. It's an issue of boundaries and compassion. And as Christians, we should have compassion. The word compassion in the New Testament is this word for like eating you alive inside. Our hearts should break for the people who genuinely are in difficult situations and looking for a better life. We should have a righteous anger towards those who are evil and who are taking advantage of those people who are in bad situations, the cartels and coyotes over in Mexico. Look, it's very complex. But when we're talking about this situation, just months from the election, Biden all of a sudden cracking down on the border. The real issue is a lack of proactive leadership. And because he was not proactive in his approach, he has created a lose-lose situation, or as the New York Magazine said, too much, too late. It was way too late. It was not proactive enough. If he would have done it proactively, the problem wouldn't have grown to this scale. But now that he's doing it too late, it's too much for the people on his left. It's too late for the people on his right. He has split the baby and he's in a lose-lose situation. There are great examples of people who in scripture were very proactive in their leadership and were blessed, and their nation was blessed because of it, and people who were reactive and who abdicated their responsibility. And if you are the president of the United States, it's a very complex issue, but you are responsible for keeping the borders of your country intact. If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. If you don't have a country, what are you the president of?
Wow.
So this was an abdication of responsibility, and now it's too much and too late. A great example of a proactive leader in the Old Testament is Nehemiah. Nehemiah went back to Judah. The walls and gates had been torn down when Babylon invaded, much earlier than this. And then Babylon was conquered by Assyria, and Nehemiah finds himself high up in the Assyrian kingdom. And he's like, can I go home and rebuild the nation? And he's given permission. In Nehemiah chapter 2, Nehemiah is back in Jerusalem, and he says, I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned. Come, let's rebuild Jerusalem's wall so that we will no longer be a disgrace. I told them how the gracious hand of my God had been on me and what the king had said to me. And they said, let's start rebuilding. And their hands were strengthened to do this good work. And because people were inspired by his proactive leadership, they rebuilt the walls of the city in 52 days. Now, that's a good thing, because in the ancient world, you would have walled cities, and that protected you from people who had nefarious intentions outside of your city. But it did something else. It sparked the heart of the people. And once the walls are rebuilt, this is when Ezra shows up and once again reads the law and the prophets to the people of Israel. And there is an actual revolution, spiritual revolution within the city. Proactive leadership always leads to good things, and it takes courage and it takes conviction and taking a stand, but people are attracted to that and they respond to that. And proactive leadership leads to other proactive steps as people follow your lead. There's an opposite example of someone who abdicated their responsibility, and that's the priest Eli. We read about this in 1 Samuel chapter 3. The Lord said to Samuel, I'm about to do something in Israel that will cause everyone who hears about it to shudder. On that day, I will carry out against Eli everything I said about his family from beginning to end. I told him I'm going to judge his family forever because of the iniquity that Eli knows about. What is that iniquity? His sons are cursing God, and he has not stopped them. He knew about it. He knew there was a problem. He knew how God felt about it. And he abdicated his responsibility. He did not step up. He did not step in. And now disaster is coming. And abdication in leadership is a problem everywhere there is leadership. It's so tempting when you have the power and you have the position, if there is a real problem, even systemic problem that is plaguing you, to just push it off or postpone or blame others, to abdicate your role, to step up, be courageous, and do something about it. When a nation faces a systemic issue, people are drawn to whoever has a proactive solution to it. The number one thing Trump ran on was immigration the first time. And whether you like his rhetoric or hate his rhetoric, whether you think his prescriptions are good or terrible, he was very proactive in what he was going to do about it. There was a plan. You might think the plan is stupid. That's kind of beside the point I'm making. He had a plan, right? It was simple. It made sense to people. It got him elected the first time. And he is winning on the immigration issue by a wide margin because people respond to proactive plans. The same is actually true right now on the economy. By polling data, people trust Trump with the economy at a significantly higher margin than they do Joe Biden. And it's because all of Trump's rhetoric, which his rhetoric has been also a huge thorn in his side because he says whatever comes to his mind without any filter. But his prescriptions for fixing things are proactive prescriptions. And we should learn this as well because we all lead something. You lead something. If nothing else, you lead yourself. Are you leading yourself proactively? Are you proactive in your health? Are you proactive in your relationships? Or are there areas where we are abdicating our responsibility, waiting until disaster happens, then finally trying to find a fast fix and putting ourselves in a lose-lose situation? God has given us the capacity. He's given us the minds. He has given us the resources to be the proactive leaders who really make a difference. And we should take advantage of that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed so you can stay up to date with all new content. And if you want early access, exclusive content, and monthly live Q&As, make sure to check out patreon.com/Clayton Tyner.